Greetings, friends. Your cartoonist pal Stan here with a new episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon, the work in progress version. Version? Yeah, version. Where I am, as I have been through most of the summer, uh, catching up on some of the drawings that I began on earlier episodes and then didn't complete. Because having sketches is great, but having finished drawings, so much better. And for any of you who are subscribed to the show's free newsletter, look, I'm getting this plug in earlier than usual. Free newsletter at 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. You, of course, get to see these as soon as they're finished. The rest of the world has to wait until I decide it's time to release them. But the subscribers get to see it soon. And the one that I did last week, the one I was working on last week, was completed and got posted on Monday. I think on Monday to that Substack. You can go see it right now. And it was sorry, pardon me. It's a cartoon homage to the D&D mini campaign. This mega adventure. I don't know whether it's somewhere between a large adventure and a campaign. The Shattered Obelisk. Shattered Obelisk. Hello, Michael. Hello, Becky. Good to see you. Becky, haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back. Glad to see you. Hi, Michael. Always a pleasure. We need some heavy beat techno countdown music. Yeah, I thought about things like putting music over that, but that would require me to get off my butt and do something. And who can do that? Not me, apparently. Anyway, the silent. So just leave you to stare at the beautiful thumbnail for 30 seconds as we do the intro. That's not such a terrible thing, and it gives you the anticipation of what's coming up. Eustachio, hello! Thank you for joining. Good to see you. Stan is a tune of R.E.M. Sten. Yeah. You know what? When that came out, there were not a few people singing Stan. When I was at TSR at the time, I think. No, had to have been later than that. Well, when I was at TSR, people would sometimes just walk around and point to me and start singing Stan in the place where I work. Haha. Funny. I actually did find it amusing and endearing. More endearing than amusing. But, I just that people cared enough to sing to me. Got me right here. Hello, Dale Donovan. Welcome to the show. So we're back for another week of doing a work in progress. Currently, I don't have a guest, but I do have a guest that's quite possibly going to phone in sometime in the next 20 minutes or half an hour. We'll see. But I will be drawing and chatting nonetheless. Hello, Owen K.C. Stevens. How are you, sir? So yeah, that's what I'm going to be working on. Like I say, the newsletter is a place to find out all the info about what's going on and to see the pieces of art when they are done, as soon as they are done. Put that up there again, 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. A wonderful place to go. Yes, oh, and you do. You know what piece of art is going to be drawn tonight. And I'm going to share that in a minute. Although, I suppose if you watch the intro thing, you know. Well, it's not a secret, right? I'm working on my cartoon homage. I'm confusing my two shows. My cartoon homage to Jeff Easley's cover to the Monster Manual 2, which I began back in the late winter, early spring, when Owen was a guest on the show. And it was at his request. So, um, that's what, in fact, here, let me open this up here, and you can see that this is what I'm going to be working on today. That's the drawing where it stands, where I finished it back in whenever that was, March, April, sometime, I think. Uh, and now we'll finish it. But I was going to, before we got any further, show you this is what I was working on last week. And here is the finished version of my homage to the cover of the Shattered Obelisk. Turned out pretty good. The one of the challenges to doing these, or one, I don't know whether it's a challenge or an advantage sometimes, but when I'm doing these cartoon homages, they are to things that were done in a painterly style with a lot of subtleties, and often during the tail end of the D&D, the 50 years honoring, the last handful of covers were really dark. I mean, very dark, as in not as dark as in subject matter, just kind of the light was subtle, and details were a little hard to see. I don't know. I mean, you could look and make it out, but that wasn't you. You kind of took it all in. It was part of the mood. Doing a cartoon is not like that, or very rarely is. That I've certainly seen. Here we go. That's what I wanted to pull this up so I could show that this one also this taking place at sunset with the sunset behind them. All the characters are in shadow. There's a lot of shadow. There's not, and there's plenty. I'm not saying there's no detail in there, but the main thing about this is the few areas where you see a little bit of light kind of half tell a story. When I'm doing a cartoon, the whole story is right up front. That's part of being a cartoon. Certainly, you can do cartoon art that is just as dark and has all that shadow. That's different than the style I usually do. I think about Frank Miller or any of the cartoonists that work in very dark, kind of noir looking style. Stark, the people who work in black and white have a lot of shadows and such. Not what I do, and not what I'm doing with this series. So it's when I do my interpretation, I very often have to, as part of it, my interpretation is bringing it all into the light and trying to do something which speaks to that original, but has exists on this more I don't know if flat is exactly what I want to say, but this clearer kind of dimension. Anyway, so I wind up with a drawing like this, where if you don't see the original next to it, if I were to cover it up or turn it off, let's turn it off. It looks fine. You might say, "Oh yes, that looks just like it." But then when you turn on the reference, you can see that, well, I invented a lot of that, the coloring and the detailing that's just kind of hinted at, and I took away some of the moodiness that was there originally. That's why it's an interpretation. Anyway, let me see what's going on here. Dale says, I hear it's hot out there again, Stan. It was today. It is right now. Got up into the mid 80s this afternoon. It's the weather here in the Pacific Northwest has flipped and flopped. We had a week where it was all in the 80s and 90s, and then last week it was all in the 70s. A couple of days it didn't really get much out of the 60s. And then it was, again, mid 70s, very pleasant over Labor Day weekend. And today we hit the mid 80s, and it's looking like it's going to be that way for the next few days. So, yeah. What you going to do? Just kind of try and be cool. Let me just see. And everyone there is talking about fun stuff, which I don't need to pull onto the screen. I like it when the chat has a good conversation. Anyway, so there we have it. This is the homage to the Shattered Obelisk that I completed last week. But now I think maybe it's time to start working on this week's work, which is 1983 Monster Manual 2, cover by Jeff Easley. And so that's what I'm going to do. Oh, you know what? I guess maybe before I start that, look at me starting and stopping and hinting and teasing. I want to show you something. I want to show you guys something. And put this aside so I have a little room. Come back to this other view of just me. Just me. And I want to show you that one of the things that I got over this weekend, I went to a game day for Labor Day weekend at my good friend and often a frequent guest here, Jeff Grubb, and his lovely wife Kate, had a game gathering, and there I saw, among other people, Wolfgang Bauer, head Kobold of Kobold Press, and he handed to me my very own copy of the Necromancer card game. Finally got my hands on a copy. It's out. It's available in stores. I just got another friend of mine sent me a picture that he took at his local store where the game was available. Hold this up again. You can see they put my signature as part of the credits, which really plays to my artistic ego. I love it. We've got a very nice rule book. Also, like I say, not surprisingly, I did all the art, so it's just full of Stanny goodness. There is the Well of Souls and some daggers. There's punch-outs. There is a bundle of character cards. Recognize this guy from the cover. And then we've got 3 stacks of cards, all of which have the art that I've shown to you and on various occasions from my iPad. So you can now get and play the game, and I'm looking forward to it. We had a game day, and we talked about playing this, but we couldn't get enough people together. And then there's a choice between, as we got later in the day, playing this, which none of us had played before, or playing a game that we all knew and liked very much. And they all looked at me like I was going to make the decision because this is my game. And while it certainly is my game visually, I didn't write it. I don't know it. And I said, look, it's a new game to me too. Why don't we play the game we know? And so we played a big kick butt round of Ticket to Ride. Becky says she's proud of me. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to show that. Michael says his nephew immediately punched out the circles. Of course, you get a game like that and you want to punch the things out. But, of course, we all know that if you're not going to play it, you don't want to punch them out because your resale value, when you go to the auction, unpunched, is like plus 25% to the price you're going to get. There's not a lot of punching going on this. It's the big circle and about 6 knives, but there you go. Hello, Cindy Robertson. Thank you for joining us. All right. Okay. Now, having said all that, having shown the card game, having talked my little bit, having blathered on for 15 minutes, let's start drawing. Let me come back over here and pull it up again, and I'm going to start working on this. As I say, right now, I don't have a guest. So, if you have any questions you want me to answer or stories you want me to tell, dropping them in chat and waiting for me to recognize them is what you want to do. Because I'm going to be heads down as I do this drawing. Now Owen picked this. I remember he was saying that he picked this because it was one of his favorite products when he first was getting into D&D. And it's a really good drawing. I mean, Jeff Easley, of course, great artist. So many classic D&D images are Jeff Easley. You know, when people talk about the great D&D artists, it's not that he gets mentioned a lot, but he's, at this point, most people don't bring him up first, unless you're old like me, unless you've been in and around D&D a long time. He won't be on your first stop of name some D&D artists. But if you start thinking about pulling up classic D&D images, right, classic product covers, classic images, it's kind of crazy how many of them are Jeff's. Just how much his art is the art of D&D. You know, there are people that are, I think that a lot of people would start naming names like Larry Elmore, like Todd Lockwood. People who definitely are great artists and who also are integral to setting the tone of D&D, to being the among the people who shaped the visual look of D&D and of fantasy in general. And I take nothing away from them, because I love them and their work too. But it kind of boggles my mind when I think about how much of it, of how many of those images, what percentage of those images turn out to be Jeff Easley images. Because I'll tell you right now, I do. As I say, I do. I love Jeff. First of all, Jeff's an awesome guy, but he's also a great painter. But there would be no point in my early career or my pre-career, because Jeff was doing covers when I was in kind of I was in the next generation. Although it took me longer to become a member of the team, but I was in the next generation. I was a late high school and college age person when he was doing these first covers. Like this, if this was 1983, as I suppose I was in college, these were coming out, and I was certainly still learning my craft and honing my skills as a cartoonist, as an artist. So it's definitely a time, an era where I could very reasonably list him as a strong influence. But at that time, I never would have, I loved these paintings. I loved it, but they weren't the ones that made me jump up and down and get. You know, the artist that I looked at and I was like, oh, look at that! I want to be just like him. I don't know what to say. I don't know what it says. First of all, I don't know what it says that's not how I felt about these. These just were great, but they weren't the kind that made me say that. Oh, I want to be like that. I don't know if I just never thought of myself as that kind of artist, or my it's weird for me, right? As a cartoonist, what I wanted to do, and the kinds of things that I look at and saw myself in were different. And anyone that's doing just painterly stuff, and even Elmore, I really liked Elmore's stuff, um, and I'll get back to that in a second. But I also didn't see Elmore as someone who I thought I could be like, because I wasn't a painter, and I never was going to be. Um, so so yeah, the it is strange to me looking back at it, how as influential as Easley is was and is, and as much as I was the in the target audience at the time, uh, I still did not. I would not at the time have named him as an influence. Now, of course, looking back at it, absolutely, there are so many things about what Jeff did, and the images, the I mean, just he. I don't know if he's the person who is most represented in the 50 drawings I've done. Hello, Penny Firehorse, for the first year of this show, the celebrating the 50th anniversary of D&D. I don't know if he is most represented, but he's got to be close. Um, should we should we look at that? You want to look at that? I was more excited about Tom Huang, maybe. No, Eustachio. No, you know who I was more excited about? I was more excited about Jeff D and Bill Willingham. Their stuff was the stuff that I would look at and get very inspired to want to be like that. But they were very comic booky, very cartoony. Uh, um, and of the painters, so I guess I could go back to what I was starting to say um, about Elmore, because of the painters, it's the ones who had very stylistic characters. People have talked about Elmore's paintings as having almost anime influence to them in how the characters look. And if you look at those paintings these days, you might see it, you might say it, but it doesn't feel very anime. But um, back in that day, no one was putting that kind of character into the faces the way that he did. His expressions, it did kind of capture kind of a painterly, three dimensionalized, uh, animated character feeling. I say I don't know that I agree with that description entirely, but I do remember it being thrown around in the day, uh, and people bringing that to me because I was a fan of Japanese, what we called Japanimation back then. Um, So that was one of the things that I did try and pick up from when I would look at um, Elmore covers, and I think that you can see that when I do the drawings of Elmore uh, covers. When I start doing uh, homages to Elmore, that they feel more Elmore-ish than this feels Easley-ish, and think that's because of the importance the uh, of the character and the expressions that Elmore put into his paintings. Come on, there we go. I was about to say, you know what, let's just take a quick break here and come back. Let's look at the 50 drawings of our, the first 50 for this, or the first 50 years drawings. Someone want to take a tally pad out there? Who wants to grab a tally pad and we'll count who did what? Um, I don't remember who did this one. Don't remember who did this one. There, but they weren't people that went on to do a lot more. That was a Dave Sutherland. That was a Dave Sutherland. So if we're keeping track, we now have Dave Sutherland has 2. Right? If you're keeping track, say so in the chat. Dave Sutherland. That is a Dave Sutherland. Right? Yeah, that's a Dave Sutherland. That's a Dave Sutherland. So suddenly Dave Sutherland's way out in front. That was an Errol Otis. Oh, that's a guy I never remember his name, but he's the British artist, and it's certainly the only one of his I did. That's Bill Willingham. That will be his because he didn't do a lot of covers. He didn't get he didn't show up in my choices a lot. That is Clyde Caldwell. There's Elmore, of course. There, now we get our first Jeff Easley. That is Clyde. Is that Clyde Caldwell also? I think so. Yes, that's Clyde Caldwell. That's Jeff Easley. That's Jeff Easley. That's Jeff Easley. That was Brahm. That is going to be Caldwell again. That was, God, I can picture him like he's standing in front of me and I can't think of his name. Parkinson, yes. Oh, there you go. There's another Easley, another Elmore. Again, this is one of the ones I think of when this definitely feels like a drawing by me, but I think it really has the Elmore feeling in it. And again, I think it's because of how important the characters' faces are. It's Janelle Jaquays. That was Rob Rupel and was it Parkinson? No, maybe. It was mainly Rupel though. That's Tony Sudlow. That's Matt Wilson, who is mostly known as a Magic the Gathering artist. There's another Brahm. Todd Lockwood. All right, so we're out of the Easleys. All right, so I guess the fact of the matter is that of all those years, I could have picked an Easley for every year. I mean, having gone through we've now gone through the first half of D&D. And I remember noticing this as I was doing the show. This year of 2000, and this product marks the midway in the history of D&D. And by that point, Easley was uh, on staff, but mostly doing novel covers. And he didn't come out to the West Coast with us, so he was back in Wisconsin painting and taking other assignments. And like I say, he mostly was doing uh, um, the novel covers. So he still did a bunch of D&D stuff. As third edition went on, the number of ones he did uh, lessened. But I think there's one more. Yes, this was an Easley also. Um, but then we got another Todd Lockwood, and I don't remember who did this one. We're gonna get in these years. The closer we get to now, the less I know the name of the artist. It's yeah, that's my gray hair showing through, and my get off my lawnedness. This was Wayne Reynolds, and we get a bunch of Wayne Reynolds. Todd Lockwood, Wayne Reynolds, Wayne Reynolds, Wayne Reynolds, Wayne Reynolds. I thought this one was Wayne Reynolds, but it's not. And I can't remember Stephen, yeah. Matt Wilson for the Unapproachable East. Here you go, another Matt Wilson. Good job, Eustachio. All right. I want to say Stephen Broussard, but I don't remember. And I know he does another couple coming up here. This was from an article in Dragon, and I don't remember who the artist was. Um, oh boy. I feel like I really need to know who this is. Like, I loved this cover. Who was it? This is the Undermountain product. Nope, not going to recall it. We're going to keep going. This is from a Dragon magazine cover. Don't remember who that was. And now we get the first of a bunch that are Tyler Jacobson. He will be the best represented in the last section. Tyler Jacobson did that. Gad, I don't remember. I don't think that's Tyler Jacobs. That's someone else. This is Tyler Jacobson. Don't remember. Don't remember who did Xanathar. But this is a guy, another magic artist, and I starts with a V. Loved his stuff. This was really beautiful, but nope. Another European painter, I think. Again, yeah. Sorry, old guy who values the drawings of my youth. I feel really bad. I shouldn't have started this. I shouldn't have started this. All right. This was the guy who did all the um, the special edition covers. Nope, blanking on his name. Another magic artist whose work I really like and whose name I don't remember. That might have been Tyler Jacobson. I have a feeling it was, but I don't. No, it's not. Someone else. It's another person whose name I had not been familiar with, but I really love the cover. And then Tyler Jacobson, and Tyler Jacobson to end it up. So yeah, if you were doing the tallying out there, first of all, sorry for not knowing all the answers. I have a spreadsheet. I suppose I could go look it up, but I'm not going to because that's the kind of guy I am. Becky's just very kind of me to pretend I don't remember just to make the other old people feel better. I wish that was the case. Anyway, what I get out of doing this now, first of all, these are not the sum total of all the art or even all the covers done. Like I picked one per year, but I tried to pick one that was representative, and but I put a lot of that were representative of D&D, right? Who was doing the covers that felt like classic D&D moments, classic D&D situations. And what I get out of going over that is that we've got Dave Sutherland is the first. Let's call these the pace setters for art, for D&D art. And Dave Sutherland is going to be the first one. Then Easley is going to be the next one, and he's going to be the one in the 80s and 90s, which is the big time for setting the stage. Again, saying that seems to diminish the work that all the other artists did. I don't mean to do that by any means, but there had to be one. I'm trying to pick one person who's going to represent that chunk of time. It's going to be Sutherland for the 70s into the early 80s. It's going to be Easley from the early 80s to the late 90s. Todd Lockwood from the late 90s to the mid 2000s. And Wayne Reynolds from the mid 2000s, from 2024 to 2010 ish. And from that point on, it's going to be a few different people. But overall, Tyler Jacobson, like he does a few, doesn't do a few for a while, and then lately has done a bunch of really key ones. So I think that overall, I would put him as the most recent pace setter for D&D art. More multiverse art was Gregor Rutkowski. Yes, of course. That's why I'm sorry, Gregor Rutkowski. Gregor's. I'm just gonna say Gregor. Gregor Rutkowski. I apologize. So there were a few very, very, very talented European artists who've worked on Magic, who got to do with the crossover at Wizards between the creative, the art management teams. There's they were very protective for a while, and now there's a lot of give and take. And you should use our guy here. And so there's a bunch of super talented artists who I'm sure Magic players could snap their name, just get their names off the top. And for me, it's just that Magic guy who did that great cover. Again, gray hair, old guy. So, yeah. Didn't exactly plan to do that on today's show, but that was fun. I always like a good excuse to go back and look at the stuff that I've done over the last year and a half. And just remember, I've while I'm here trying to catch up and feeling guilty about the drawings I didn't do, I did accomplish a little. I have. It hasn't just been falling behind. All right, what do we got going on here? Because these pencils are not helping me out exactly. All right, I'll tell you one thing I did do was change the shape of this crown. But I'm okay with that. Again, because these are homages, there are always places where I have to say, I can't or I won't do exactly what the original artist did because it's for various reasons, but a lot of times because it's too complicated for the medium I'm trying to translate this drawing into. It's only when I zoom in this close that I sometimes discover, oh, that's a shortcut I took. And then other times I look at this and go, all right, I just got that wrong in my pencils. And I'm going to fix it right here on this spot. Like that. Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking about what we just did, and I feel okay with those broad statements of who I would pick as the pace setter. And you know what, I like that term for it. It's not naming one person over another and saying they were the face of D&D. They were the pace setters. They were setting the tone, the pace clearly for the other artists who some of whom like I started out saying, some of whom, if you asked me at the time, I would have named as the most important, or the ones that speak to me, the ones that speak to and inspire me. I found as I get older, and particularly as I get more experienced as an artist myself, the I'm getting more uh, more I don't know. I was gonna say more respect, but that's not exactly what I mean. More appreciation for some of the artists whose work in my younger days I just kind of accepted and really kind of took for granted. And I think that's if I had one if that's the if I needed one interpretation of my personal journey with with Jeff Easley's art, that's what it would be. Is when it was coming out in the 80s, when this was new art, I was taking for granted. He did it so well and made it look so uh, effortless and so appropriate. It's like, of course, that's just how it is. Who would have done it any differently? Um, that I took it for granted for some of the shinier ones. I mean, in the worlds of comics, which was also a huge influence on me at the time. Right? It was the John Byrne. Everyone loved John Byrne. I love John Byrne, and I still do. But there are other cartoonists I liked, other pencilers I liked, and a bunch of whom I have come to appreciate more, have more um, more appreciation for than I did. I don't just take them for granted the way I did. There are some that I dislike then that I dislike now, but I don't want to talk about them. Why give them the air, and why give anyone that might be offended by my personal opinions, my personal uh, likes or dislikes? I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm not even saying they're bad artists. What I would be saying is that they did not appeal to me, and they still don't appeal to me. Why do that? Why ruin someone's day with my negativity? Talk about the people I did like, and the people that I have come to appreciate more. I always liked George Perez, also Byrne and Perez, same era. Um, I didn't like Perez as much as I liked Byrne at the time. Over the years, I have come to respect what Perez did more. It impresses me more. Byrne's stuff, which I still love to this day, is very much kind of like what I was talking about with Elmore. Burns is very much a stylistic, a voice, and while Perez absolutely has that too, he also has a um, he also has some technical accomplishments that I kind of underplayed or undervalued in the day. In that, I didn't value them as much as I valued what Byrne was doing. Tell you a little earlier in comics history, someone whose work I did not like at the time, and I've come to have a lot more respect and admiration for, is a guy who mostly is known for having done Superman comics in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, named Kurt Swan. Um, when I was getting into comics in that era, I looked at his stuff, and for me, all I saw was he looks like he's he's got a style from the 1950s, man. He's the old world. He doesn't have that new flash, and you know what? He didn't. But tell you what, he was a hell of an illustrator, and boy, could he do! And not only was he an illustrator, he could do comics. He could tell stories. And that's a thing that as I developed professionally, I came to value more and more is um, the artists who were really good at telling stories panel by panel, as opposed to just doing flashy drawings. Now, the ones I like the most, the Burns and Perez, all the great ones of that era, could do both. I'm not in any way uh, trying to underplay their ability to do that. But there were a number of artists who could do that, who were not flashy, that I undervalued at the time. Ron Frenz is one whose name pops to mind. Did Spider-Man for a very long time in the 80s. Um, that was a skill that I didn't realize how much I would come to value it. Ron Frenz also was really good as a chameleon. He could draw. You wouldn't mistake his drawings for other artists usually, but he could get close to a lot of other artists' styles, and continue to do really great storytelling, and that's an incredible skill. Um, Michael Chat says he sees Ron friends at signings all the time. Well, next time you see him, tell him Stan has regards the hell out of him. I don't know. He doesn't care. What he shouldn't care about what I do or say. But yeah, you can. I mean, certainly you can tell him he came up and how much I was saying how how I'm sorry I undervalued him when I was a teen and early 20s fan, and as a professional, I've come to greatly respect and value the work that he did in that era. Um, Hi, Chris Andrew. Thank you for joining us. Um, yeah, what else was I saying? Maybe it's time for me to see if you guys in the chat have um, any other questions or things that have come up. Um, Michael names a bunch of artists. Steve Lightly. Steve Lightly, I loved his covers. There's a bunch of people who do good, great covers, and I say that's a difference in comic art. There are people that are great uh, renderers, great drawers, great artists, but uh, are not as great for a single panel or an image or a cover or a promotional poster. Uh, who, when they become the person doing the panel to panel, just don't tell the story as well. Their storytelling skills are not as sharp as their artiste skills, and that's where I would put Steve Lightly. Again, I love his covers. He did the Titans for a very long time. You'd see among lots of other things. Not the Titans, the Legion of Superheroes. Brian Kitson, I don't really know. George Perez, Phil Jimenez, who when he first came on the scene was kind of pegged as well. He's just a George Perez clone, and yeah, Perez definitely influenced him, but he also has the chops in the storytelling. He's he's not just aping a style. He's a really good comic uh, artist. He's a good story. Neil Adams may be the pinnacle of both. Um, Mike Grell, I love Mike Grell. Um, Mike Grell is an interesting choice. I loved Grell's stuff. I loved Warlord. Um, I liked his Mike Sable stuff. I liked some of the earlier stuff he did for Legion of Superheroes, among other things. Um, he really went into his. He got. He really developed his own style, the way some some artists do, like the Burns, like the Perez's. Like you see a Mike Grell drawing, and you recognize it as a Mike Grell drawing. He was he was and is he's still alive, I believe, unless he's passed away recently. I saw him at a convention not too long ago. Um, and I think he lives in the Pacific Northwest somewhere. Uh, he could really tell a story. Now, one of the things that um, I came to feel about Grell at the time. Again, now this is where my feeling. I'm going back to my feelings at the time, so I'm not putting these forward as my artistic snobbery now. At the time, I thought that after a while, as his style developed and as he started working on his own stuff more than DC stuff. I thought that his style got a little stiffer and more stylistic. Interestingly, that often leads to having comics feel a little lifeless. But his ability to tell a story was so good. His ability to frame a comic and pick the panel by panel progress. He was a great writer too. Um, his ability to do that meant that even though individually, image by image, I would look and think that uh, his his work was just getting a little stiff, a little um, more defined by what would Mike Grell draw here than by what is the best thing to draw here. Um, and despite that, his comics were continued to be great storytelling, which again, that really is a mark of that's something I highly value and appreciate. And let's say, even at the time, it's not like I ever stopped liking Grell's art at all. I I personally, and again, this is the personal opinion of 20-year-old Stan. Um, I did not. I thought that he was taking a step backwards in quality, in the things that I appreciated. Let me go back in the things that I appreciated in his work when he started uh, to get that little kind of stylistic stiffness uh, in his uh, in his drawings. Now, this also, of course, was a time that he was doing things like uh, Green Arrow, the Longbow Hunters, and I had nothing bad to say about those at all. But I did recognize that, yeah, this is a Mike Grell drawing, and I don't know. That's Who can argue with that? Who can argue with the value of saying, look at this thing? It's very good, and I look at it, and oh boy, no one else could do. I wouldn't let anyone else get away with that. That's a Mike Grell thing. And I'll tell you, as much as I love John Byrne, as big a fan as I am of John Byrne, uh, in the last um, 15, 20 years, that's certainly been. I found myself thinking similar thoughts about the work that he did for IDW and the work he's done just on his own as private commissions. I wouldn't. I look at that and I think, yeah, no, beautiful. God, I love John Byrne, but I wouldn't let anyone else get away with that. That's a John Byrne thing. Oh, to be good enough to A, be able to have such a thing, and B, be able to make a living with it. Say, I still am a big John Byrne fan. Um, but there you go. We all we all change as we get older. I think as an artist myself, I find myself realizing that, and it may have happened to me already, that we all, as artists, peak and then are doing uh, God, this is going to sound so snooty and judgmental, but we all peak and then are doing lesser versions, lesser imitations of ourselves for the rest of our careers. We'll never be able to capture the peak of whenever that is or was, probably was, and I also think we probably can't recognize it because all we're trying to do is we're as an artist, as I tell you, as a writer or a cartoonist or any kind of artist, you are where you're at. You've done what you've done, and you're looking forward at the next great thing you think you can do, and you're striving for that. And it takes someone outside of you, and more importantly, it takes a long-term fan base to look at the bulk of your work and the course of your career, and to be able to say, well, look at this upswing, and he peaked here, and then it was just kind of the same thing for a while, and a little less so, and he tried something new, and that didn't work out, and he tried to come back. He couldn't quite get as good as he used to be. And just thinking, I think that's true for all artists, except with exceptions, with the great masters exceptions. The great masters constantly are learning and growing and improving and inventing something new. There are people like that out there. The Picassos, the I don't know. Think of other great the Hirschfeld. Well, no, I think Hirschfeld also. What maybe one of my greatest uh, influences uh, over the course of my artistic career. I think that it was very late in his life, but I think the last 5 to 6 years, he was he was a lesser version of Hirschfeld than he had been the right up to that point. It constantly been growing. It's a pretty good run, 90 years. Um, like I say, I think the number of masters, of great masters who never lose a step and are constantly growing. Um, Hokusai might be one of those people. Um, Van Gogh might be one of those people. Like I say, I think for sure Picasso was. Everyone else, all the greats, have some version of what I was just talking about. John Romita Sr. and Jr., Dale points up. John Romita Sr., yeah, well, he's certainly someone who helped to invent the Marvel universe, the Marvel look. And I think for sure he peaked sometime in the early 70s and was doing a version of John Romita ever past that point. It was just he wasn't doing the best work he'd ever done. He wasn't growing anymore. He was just being John Romita, which was plenty damn good. But you know, just what I'm talking about here. He peaked. John Romita Jr. Has an interesting course, right? He's one of those guys whose work I did not appreciate a lot when I first saw it as an artist, and it was in that case, it was um, because of the inker. Uh, the I think that my personal opinion on John Romita Jr. is that I love his storytelling. I think that as a storyteller, as a breakdown, as a panel to panel, design what's going to be on the page, tell the story person, he is among the best of the last 50 years. I don't love his finished art as much as I did, but that varies a lot depending on who's inking it, which tells me that his pencils are probably usually very light, that he's focusing more on the layout and the design than on the final rendering. And then what the final rendering looks like will vary widely depending on who's inking him. Now, what do I know? I certainly have not worked in comics, let alone on Marvel Comics, and I've certainly never met him, though I did meet John Romita Sr. Once. Um, so what the hell do I know? But uh, that's my headcanon on on John Romita Jr. I Yeah, did great Spidey stuff. I think his inking on top of Bob Layton on Iron Man in the early to mid '80s um, really made that book. Layton, another guy who's got a pretty good eye, but I think that uh, when I see work that he does by himself, I think it's really stiff. Uh, and when he's inked by people like Romita, the Iron Man uh, series definitely showed me this. When he's inked by someone with a light, energetic touch like Romita, it brings his layouts to life. It brings his drawings to life. And when Romita left that book and other artists came on, it was almost like they got a different artist. It felt like it was someone trying to be um, Layton, when in fact it was Layton, just as it always had been. The difference was who was rendering it. Who else was on this list that I want to talk about? Sal Buscema. Sal and John Buscema, another interesting pair of brothers who worked on Marvel. Sal, another guy I didn't value as much. Um, he did not have the gravitas that his brother John Buscema did. Um, he felt like a shadow. Now, this was my opinion again, I'm going back to my opinion as a 19, 20-year-old. He was like a shadow of his brother John. There were a lot of things uh, uh, one of the, uh, uh, one of the interesting things about art related artists, fathers and sons, brothers, cousins who grew up together, people from the same family who tend to draw the same way. Now, part of that sometimes is trying to maintain the family uh, the family reputation, right? This is what a Buscema draws like, and part of it is, you know, the difference between all artists in drawing a picture of the same thing. You see when people are looking at the same thing and in a studio or some other place where they're looking at the same source material and doing different interpretations. Part of that is the skill of the hand. Most of that is the interpretation, what you see, what what it is that you see, and then how you represent it, and what aspects of it pop to you. What is the filter? It's a lot like a camera filter, like a camera app filter. Um, Hello, Mr. Nystel. Thank you for joining us. Um, Thank you for popping in, Cindy. I'm glad you could be here for a while. I hope to see you again soon. Stay cool. Um, yeah, it's like a filter. When we're all seeing the same things, but our brain, our eye, our uh, and particularly for those who are artists, our interpretation, our connection of that to our hand, what line will represent the thing we see? Uh, a lot of that, I think, can be based on what you're taught, but a lot of it can just. I think for my money, for as money is maybe the wrong way to say it, for my completely unknowledgeable opinion, I think that is the thing that most is accountable for styles being shared between family members. That something about the genetics or the brain chemistry causes them, or and combined with working together and pushing each other at an early age when you're learning things, learning the same thing and helping, seeing what your brother did that you want to do. I want to do something like that, and that becomes part of your own repertoire. And then you see that what you do is what you then see and look for. So, yes, Sal Buscema. Go back to that. As a 20-year-old, just thought of him as a lesser Buscema. The longer I read comics and the more I got into drawing comics, the more I came to appreciate, again, what I was talking about earlier, his storytelling. Really good. Oh, really good at storytelling. And with quick lines. John Buscema is was an artist and a renderer, and he created. He wanted to create art. Sal Buscema. If I'm gonna just throw uh, meaningless but often controversial terms around, Sal Buscema was an illustrator, and he was a commercial illustrator. He got the thing down. He's told the message. Uh, he sold the line, told the story. John Buscema crafted the visual masterpiece. Sal Buscema told a great story. Like I say, as I've gotten further and further into my career, I've come to respect and value that more highly than I had as a younger fan and beginning artist. Hello, Linnea. Thank you for joining. Matt Wagner. Oh, I love Matt Wagner. So here's a strange thing. When, like most people who were reading comics in the 80s, my first introduction to Matt Wagner, almost everyone's first introduction to Matt Wagner, was the very first Mage comic, Mage the Hero Discovered. Which was inked by Tim Sale. Tim Sale? Yeah, Tim Sale. The guy who went on to create the Max, among other things. And has a very strong style of his own. And it was also colored and rendered with airbrush, which was very different from anything else you saw and anything else you've seen since. It was kind of a unique look. And the storytelling and the breakdown and the character design was all Matt Wagner. The inking, what Sam did to the did in his inking, but why am I now blanking on the guy's name I just said? I want to say Sam Neill, the actor, which is not it. But Tim Sale. What Tim Sale did on the inking was gave it a polish that and Tim Sale's. If you ever look at the Max. Look at Superman for All Seasons. Look at those first series of Mage. There's a lot of places where when I draw something, I finish it. The line goes up to here and it's done, and I make sure they connect and like that. Tim Sale very often doesn't and leaves the trailing line to help tell the story and just look. It's his style. It's part of his style, and you can see it very much uh, in his own stuff. But you could see that he added that in his inking of Matt Wagner, which Matt Wagner, when he inks himself, does not do. Um, and the thing for me that it took me a while to kind of, I got over it pretty quickly, even back then. But I did not like Matt Wagner on his own as much as I liked Matt Wagner inked by Tim Sale. Um, Again, it's a personal preference. Kind of like you could see that in go back to another guy we've been talking about earlier, John Byrne, inked by Terry Austin, is a distinct thing from John Byrne inked by anyone else. You can say better or worse. I don't. If you say worse, I'm going to laugh at you. But I won't laugh at you. Inside, I'll laugh at you. Uh, you know, I think John Byrne inked by himself is very different, and so he's gone through a lot of experimentation and changes in how that looks over the years. Anyway, they think John Byrne inked by himself is like three different inkers over the years. As his inking style changed. Um, uh, yes. So, what was I saying? John Byrne. Yeah, John Byrne inked by Terry Austin is just a different thing. And if that's the thing you like best, uh, no other John Byrne work is going to feel like he hit his creative peak during that period, when in fact the the style that you liked was never his. The part that has gotten lesser is not about his skill; it's about who his partner is. Um, and I felt that way about Matt Wagner. I liked stuff that he did with um, Tim Sale so much that over the course of the rest of his career, as much as I like the stuff he does, and I like it a lot, as much as I've liked the other two Mage series, um, I have not liked them as much as I liked the first one. Because the thing that I liked there was the Tim Sale part of the equation. As I say, I do like Matt Wagner's work on his own. I don't fault him for it. I don't hold it against him, and I certainly don't think of him as a lesser artist. Uh, he still, all the things that he did well with Tim Sale, the storytelling, the character design, the panel-to-panel visual storytelling, continues to do great, and grew and learned and became even greater over the course of his career. But just that stylistic thing that most appeals to me, again, about what appeals to me as opposed to is good by some standard or measurement, just won't ever touch it. He will never do that on his own, because he never would have done it on his own. It was all part of that collaboration. Wagner's best was the Demon series and Grendel. I thought that Wagner's first Grendel series, the backups in the Mage stories, were just they were Art Deco masterpieces. It wasn't regular comic storytelling. It was more like illustrated novel, highly illustrated novel. When he started doing Grendel as a comic, well, that's unfair. He started doing Grendel as a comic before he did Mage, when as an even earlier project. But after that, after the Grendel of the Mage backups era, when he started doing new Grendel comics, that was the first time I looked at Matt Wagner's art and didn't love it so much. He was trying something very interesting, and I think he succeeded at it here with hindsight. But again, I was looking for the Tim Sale aspect, and it wasn't there at all. And Matt Wagner also, I mean, this seems like a strange thing. Also an artist, right? He was trying and stretching to do something that he hadn't done before, and to get to achieve an effect that was specific to that story. And I appreciate that, but I didn't like it as much. I love the stuff, but over the years, I've come to love the stuff that Matt Wagner does on his own too. I kind of put it in a separate bucket. Like, I love it, but I don't love it as much as the Wagner and Sam Keith stuff. I don't know if you can hear it, but outside my window in the dog park, there are young children now running around and playing. And young children like to make strange noise, occasionally shrieks and hollers. So if you hear any of those, that's what's going on. And I have no control over it. And I suppose if anyone gets hurt, the police or an ambulance will get called. But that almost never happens, in that people don't get hurt. If they do, the police or the ambulance are called. That always does happen. There we go, shrieks and hollers. I don't know if any of you have been watching this show long enough to remember the first well, I guess it wasn't even this show. I was doing some other things. It was an early sumo show. When the someone who lives in the neighborhood at the time, someone had moved in the neighborhood. There were a bunch of kids. There were a lot of kids, and they got sent to in summer evenings to go run around the dog park, so they wouldn't be running around their house. And there was this one little girl who was pre-verbal, but not pre-audio. And all she did, every communication she had, was a shriek, was a from the bottom of her toes out through the top of her head shriek. And there were shrieks that were happy, and there were shrieks that were mad, like you're I want to play too, and there were shrieks that were scared, and I got to the point where I really could. I felt like I understood what was going on just by the shrieks. I didn't like the shrieks. There's a whole lot of shrieking going on. Um, Thankfully, in years since, although there always is some shrieking when the kids are out there, I haven't had any kid who in the neighborhood who could only communicate that way yet. Hopefully, won't have that again. Let's see. Michael says Bill Kitson, I might recognize from the Legion '89 series. Oh, okay. I didn't read that. So in 1989, I was getting ready to, and then did move to Japan, and my comics reading, my American comics reading, dropped way down. And I was always more of a Marvel person than a DC person. And by '89, I actually was more equally independent and Marvel, with Marvel dropping in percentage wise in what I was reading all the time. So I did not read Legion '89, but I'm aware of it, and I remember being aware that the art looked good. Dale Donovan says, I met Dave Cockrum at New York Comic Con in the '90s. There's another guy, Cockrum, very high on that list of people that I did not appreciate for a long while. Having come in uh, to X-Men, oh well, that's a longer story than that. But having come into the new X-Men about a month after John Byrne joined the title, uh, I just happened. That's when I was introduced to it at summer camp. Probably no, three or four issues into Byrne's work on the title. I then had to go back. Well, I didn't have to. I wound up going back to collect all the back issues, and my opinion was that Byrne was just superior to Cockrum. There were many things about Cockrum I just didn't like as much, and some things I just didn't like. Um, and so I came to be of the opinion that Cockrum was, at best. So, in fact, someone whose presence on a comic would maybe even lessen the likelihood that I was going to buy it. And then when Byrne left X-Men and Cockrum took over again, I was really missing Byrne. I was not going to like anyone as much as I like that. But he brought the weight of my previous judgment with him. And so I didn't like it. I didn't like it, and I didn't appreciate it, and I had a negative opinion of Cockrum and his art. Looking at it now, the same way that I didn't appreciate Kurt Swan's work when I was 10 years earlier than that. I have, in the meanwhile, grown up, learned a little something, and gotten perspective and gone back and learned about, I couldn't see. Like I say, I was just coming in. I liked the Byrne stuff. I didn't like the Cockrum stuff as much. I didn't really appreciate how much Cockrum did, for the creation, which seems stupid, right? I knew that there were 15 issues that he had done, and creating these characters and giving them their life and bringing them to this point that Byrne took over with them. I should have. How could I not understand that? I was a moron kid. Anyway, I didn't appreciate what he achieved, just the huge achievement of what he did with the X-Men to create what we came to call the new X-Men. Now, 40 years beyond that, that seems like a weird title to call them now, but that's what they were, the all new, all different X-Men. I did not appreciate Cockrum, and in fact, I had a negative opinion about him, and I have come to really appreciate the things that he did well. I don't love his art the way I love Byrne's art. Even now, never will. I still don't love the art, particularly from when he came back from those issues 139 or 140 on. They're all right. They're certainly better than a lot of other people would do. But my emotional attachment to how much I loved the work that Byrne was doing is forever going to be an influence on how much I can love that art. But I can be smart enough to understand that that is not a qualitative judgment on it. And what a good job he does of telling stories. Great comics artist, Dave Cockrum. And it took me years to be smart enough to get past my stylistic snobbery. Chris Andrews says, I think the Days of Future Past storyline in X-Men Sentinel is the best storytelling I've ever seen in mainstream comic book. It was really good. Michael says Barry Kinson's costume design and aliens are great. Speaking of aliens, Michael also says Cockrum as a designer was great. The way he stylized future tech. Yes. Like I say, young Stan was the idiot. I'm looking here at what was said earlier. Dale had said he met Cockrum at next to the TSR booth. Venture's only chance to defeat the Hill Giant is to do. We're now looking at. Yeah, we're not going to comment on that. Anyway, I've now kind of lost the idea of what I was saying. I may have to start the conversation afresh. I was saying that I have come to appreciate and respect the work of Cockrum in a way that I didn't when I was younger. It's funny, we started by talking about D&D art and, Easley. But we spent most of the time talking about comic book art. Maybe better that way. Yeah, this is looking good. All right. My bad. Sorry. No apologies. I'm not saying you can't talk. I'm saying we can't because I'm not going to say it out loud. You can talk about that in the chat all you want. I did not mean if it came off like that's what I meant. That's not what I meant. So we're saying Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past was incredible. I've just been because people have been posting it on Facebook. I've just been seeing a bunch of isolated uh, sequences from the uh, the Death of Phoenix storyline from just a few issues earlier uh, than Days of Future Past. I I may have mentioned this before. I was a huge X-Men fan in the early '80s. I After discovering the new series about issue 111, I went and bought the back issues of the whole run, which took me a little while, and it seemed expensive at the time, but it was nothing compared to comics costs today. Uh, and I read that whole storyline from Giant Size X-Men 1 through the latest issue every month. Every month. Before the new issue would come out, because, like any good comics fan can do, I knew what week of the month the new issue would be coming out. And leading up to the new issue, I would go back and read the whole storyline and then the new episode. And then during the month, I would probably go back and reread certain issues again. So, I read that book a lot. I read those stories a lot. Those original Cockrum stories and the entirety of the Byrne run. It was only when I went away to college and that I stopped doing that every month. And that would have been in the fall of '82. Donovan, oh no, not the asparagus people. Poor asparagus people. They never saw it coming. Um, yeah, I read a lot of X-Men. I think that I guess I started saying this because I've been seeing the the panels a lot on Facebook recently. I think that the everything leading up to the death of Phoenix storyline, uh, I think that for me is um, one of the best stories I've ever seen told in comics. I know there's a lot of debate about what happened there and how it was resolved. I know that in recent years, John Byrne has gone on to. He was that was that was the beginning of the end of his relationship with X-Men, because originally Jean Grey was not supposed to die. Uh, it was supposed to be the death of Phoenix and the reclamation of Jean Grey. If you don't know. Um, and it was decided that after she killed those asparagus people that Dale was talking about, after she blew up the sun and just killed the whole planet, that it was not sufficient to say that Phoenix had been killed, but Jean Grey can walk away. That it was important that it can't be the "I was possessed, I'm not responsible" answer, which that it would feel too much like a cop out, and so the storyline was changed so that, as happened in the comic, uh, killing Phoenix destroyed Jean Grey too. Not that it stuck, right? She's been back a long time now, and in many different guises. But at the time, it felt pretty permanent. Anyway, Byrne felt pretty strongly about that, apparently, and I think if I remember correctly, part of the problem was that um, Chris Claremont, the writer, they were co-writers on that book, but Claremont got to decide things that Byrne didn't want. Byrne wanted to be able to control and tell his own stories, and that was a big part in him leaving the book to go on to be writer and artist and be able to control the stories and not to have to play with anyone else is essentially it. All right, that's looking pretty good. Um, but and so, like I say, in recent years, he's gone on to do. I don't know if there probably are folks here who don't know this, but in recent years, as a personal project, he started doing this thing called Elswim, which picks up at with the original ending, what had been intended as the original ending of X-Men 137, where Phoenix is destroyed and Jean Grey is restored, though with a significant amount of, it was unclear if she would ever recover to be a functioning adult again. But Phoenix was burned out of her head. And the X-Men come back, and the storyline continues. So X-Men Elsewhere is a thing that Byrne has done. He's writing and drawing, where he's telling, it's his what if. Like, this is what I would have liked to have done with the X-Men at that point. And he's now written about 30, 35 issues, maybe more, it might be up to the 40s, worth of these stories. And I believe that next year, Marvel is actually going to publish a collection of some of them. It's a now, this is not Byrne of 1984. It's current Byrne, and with all of the things that have happened to him creatively and just aging that much, it's not certainly, and it's not inked by Terry Austin. And if you liked uh, what Chris Claremont brought to the writing part of the equation, that's not there either. It's all Byrne in the way that that run of Fantastic Four in the mid 200s was all Byrne. But it's a lot of fun. Dale says the original Brood saga was amazing. It was amazing. And there's also the period when um, uh, Dave Cockrum transitioned out for the second time from his involvement. He'd done he'd, he'd done everything up to Byrne. Byrne left. Cockrum did most of everything up until the middle of the Brood session. It's funny, they have the X-Men have when interstellar space adventures and Cockrum leaves. he he left right. Byrne took over right in the middle of the first Imperial Guard story, and Paul Smith took over right as Cockrum left the second time in the Brood storyline. And it's just a weird bookend to Cockrum's career on that title. All right, let's look at this. Look at this. So we got our giant and our knight, and that is the those are the drawings. That is the character part of this. I'm going to keep drawing. I know I've been going about an hour and a half, a little more, as I do on these episodes. I'll just work a little more. But what I'm going to do is I sometimes tell you, like, show you a little behind the scenes here. So layers wise, all of this, if I turn off the background, all of this is on one layer. These characters are just going to be on one layer. Now, for the rest of this scene, I'm going to have 3 other layers. So I'm now going to make a new make one new layer so I can show you. So this part here up front is going to be one layer. And kind of this part here is going to be another layer. And then, well, I guess 4 layers, because in this part here, well, let me get it. You know what? I can do this with some chicanery. If I fill this in here, oops. Apparently, I'm not clever enough. That's one layer. There's going to be parts here that I didn't connect, so it's going to be hard to do. Let me see if I connected all those. There we go. Is that going to work? Nope. Something here is breaking through. Nope. There we go. That's going to be that layer. And then behind that, let's go for an even darker green. This is going to be another layer. Let me see if I tighten that up enough. Probably not. Yes. Including that and that. And then back here, is going to be the far background. So this is how I'm thinking of it. I'm going to drop our drawing back on here. It doesn't show you anything much. because it's not colored in, maybe a little harder to see. If I drop the opacity on that, there we go. Maybe that makes it easier. So, no, I didn't even get that right. Because, what am I missing? I'm missing the fact that this here and this here are also going to be dark green. Probably. No. Some of that's wrong. What did I do wrong there? What did I do wrong there? Well, part of what I did wrong is that this is going to be that. This is going to be... No. How is that going to work? I don't know. That's how it's going to work. There we go. Now, I don't know. Maybe I'm doing all this and this doesn't mean anything to you. And I'm just confusing you for my own sake. But, so you know, I'm thinking about this in 3 layers. We've got the... Now I'm going to switch to red so I can see. Got the front layer. We've got the middle layer. We got the background. And we got the deep background. And each one of them are going to be their own layer with their own shading and a sense of front and back. So this part of the middle ground is going to look closer than this part of the middle ground, which is going to look closer than this part of the middle ground. I'm going to achieve with color effects. And the same thing in the background. This part is going to look closer than this part. So on. But that's how I'm going to proceed from here on. I'm going to start with drawing this on its own layer, and then I'm going to draw this on its own layer, and then this on its own layer. And that's all line drawing. And then I'm going to start coloring. And this layer here is all color. There's no line detail there. It's like the sunset in the drawing I was showing you earlier. Anyway, I'm just going to delete that because this all lives in my head. I was drawing that for your edification. Whether or not anyone gets anything out of it but me, I'll never know. But in the meantime, I'm going to look here at what's going on in the chat. Dale says he was subscribed to the X-Men in that era. Must be talking about the Brood era. Good era to be subscribed. Put together, Chris Andrews says, your favorite all-time team of 10 X-Men. Interesting question. Chris says his would be Professor X, Wolverine, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Beast, Storm, Iceman, Colossus, Angel, and Kitty Pryde. That's a pretty classic lineup. That's a end of the Burn Run. Plus Beast, who is popping in and out, back and forth between Avengers and X-Men. Michael says favorite team over the latter years has been X Factor. It's been radically different every time and just slightly off-center no matter which incarnation. Yeah, well, I mean, yes. X Factor, when X Factor came around as a return of the original X-Men. Let me get this off this screen for a second. One of the things I really, really liked in reading when I first got in, and this happened very early into when I was reading X-Men, new X-Men, right? The early part of the Byrne era. Um, the storyline had the X-Men having disappeared in an explosion in Antarctica, and the world thinking they were dead. Jean Grey and the Beast survived. Professor X thought they were dead. Everyone thought they were dead. And this went on for 10 issues of the comic or so. So the better part of a year. When they get reintroduced, when they come back to Westchester, when they come back from running around Antarctica and Japan and and Canada and all the various things they did. There's a scene where they, I think it's that the X-Men have come home and they find the X Mansion mothballed, and I think that Beast gets a notification alarm has been tripped when they go in there. I don't remember whether they get notified of Beast being in the building or Beast is notified of them being in the building. In any case, they run into each other, and there's it's a kind of a throwaway 2 or 3 panel interaction where they run into each other, and Beast sees Cyclops, and they both have the reaction of "Oh my God, you're alive," which just a fun little, nothing particularly earth-shattering in that in picking that and making that a scene in storytelling. But particularly in comics when people are dying and coming back all the time. But the way Cyclops and Beast see each other now, a large part of this is Byrne's art. A large part of it, though, is just the writing. They see each other like, "Oh my God, you're alive," and it feels like an "Oh my God, you're alive" moment, as opposed to "Oh, that didn't kill you, Thor. I guess you're back again." It's a, "Oh my God, you're alive," and running and hugging each other. It clarified for me something that I loved about the X-Men for a long time. And by that point, I'd gone back not only and read all of the new X-Men every month. I'd been collecting, and I collected original X-Men, and because they were pretty cheap at the time, and I bought reader copies, not necessarily pristine collector's copies. I've read most of the original run, from the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby issues through the Neil Adams issues, when they in the issue 62, 63, something like that, when the title started going into reruns. But I'd read the whole story arc of these. The original X-Men had been branded as the strangest teens of all, and it was very much about them as young in a kind of Harry Potter style. These kids were going to this mutant school together, and they bonded, and they had a very family-like feeling, as opposed to a super team feeling. Parallel to the way the Fantastic Four have been in their best iterations, in my opinion. And oh my stars and garters, that's a very good Beastism. I don't know whether that was Claremont wrote that, or that came out of the writing from Roger Stern in the Avengers around that same era, but yeah. But a Beast called Cyclops Scotty which no one did. It wasn't part of the story at all, but it did harken back to what he called him in those earlier episodes. And you know, um, Cyclops called him Hank, which no one else called him. Everyone at that point, from the Avengers where he lived all the time to everyone that they called him Beast. So the scene where it's like Scotty, Hank, and they run and they hug each other. Um, it was such a great moment. Again, it's one of those things that I think is easy to be overlooked by readers. I'm sure it was overlooked at the time. Even easier to be overlooked by people looking back and or being who are new and coming um, to the book now. But X-Men was a really different kind of group, a different feeling among the characters and how they interacted with each other, and it kind of that's been continued to be the case. It's morphed over the years, but I remember being really impressed by that in the moment by that scene, that interaction with them, and how they felt like they didn't feel like superhero characters. Uh, they felt like people, and this history, and knowing this history of the original team and what the mansion had been like, that in the 60s and that point, but of course, time dilation, whatever. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. I love that scene. It's such a uh, um, it yeah it said a lot in very subtle ways, very subtle ways. Having said that, let me have another sip of my soda, and let's get back to doing some drawing with those layers I was just talking about. I mean, I could stop and color the giant now, but it's even harder for me to talk and color than it is for me to talk and draw. Let's see. Chris Andrews says, as a teen, I understood the metaphor of mutants and prejudiced minorities. Yeah, yeah. But it was never too preachy. It was strange how the new X-Men were not the strangest teens of all. And I just read an article recently about how, in fact, it wasn't an article from a magazine. It was an essay from this year's San Diego Comic Con program book, and it was written by Gail Simone, and it's about how the new X-Men, how it was Marv Wolfman and Dave Cockrum, because before before Chris Claremont took over the writing, how Marv Wolfman and Dave Cockrum, how much they changed, what a breath of fresh air these new X-Men were in 1975 when it was first published. How different it was than anything else that was on the market. And the article, Gail Simone has writes the main article, but she approached a lot of comics creators who were working at the time and who were in the young and up and coming stages. People who were about my age, who were readers at the time, a little bit older than me, because they were reading when Giant Size X-Men hit. And how different it felt. And I'll tell you, one of the things that article struck me was I am just too young to have gotten that, because when I came in, that was where things were at. Like, I didn't know that this was new and different than what had come before. I just knew that it was what was happening, and it was damn cool. Um, but how the X-Men being uh, not a group of normal superheroes from New York, where almost everyone comes from, but they were from around the world, and some of them were grown-ups, right? They weren't the strangest teens of all. Wolverine was a agent for the Canadian government who had just put in his first appearance as a character uh, in uh, the Hulk. Um, Banshee had been a villain or an antagonist in classic X-Men back from around 1966, 65, and had been around. Um, Storm was, first of all, more powerful than they'd let X-Men be previously. With her, she was a goddess. Um, I mean, certainly she came from Africa, where she was worshipped and treated like a goddess because she had this ability to control the weather. Nightcrawler was the closest, I think, or one of the closer ones to a classic style X-Men character from the original grouping, but he was monstrous and had this mysterious background. He was also an adult. Had been a circus performer. All right, that's that layer. So I'm going to come over here and make a new layer. Um, uh, Thunderbird, John Proudstar, Native American, which there had not been a lot of characters who had his own, who was not just a derivative. He was still fairly derivative. It was the 70s, but he was a step forward in representation. Um, Cyclops represented the old team, but there was a way he was presented that he represented the teenager who was growing up. Right, he was a grown up now. It's like think about The Graduate, in that he's now not the same Scott Summers from the previous series. He's grown up, and he's a leader of this team. Uh, yeah, it was very, very different. Let's say, in a way that I couldn't appreciate until looking back, and I really didn't appreciate enough until I read this article. I highly suggest, if you can find a copy of this year's San Diego Comic Con program book or the article online. Um, I read it somewhere, had linked to a digital copy of the San Diego Comic Con program book, where there were a bunch of really good articles. Actually, I would say when I go to Comic Con, I don't usually read the articles in the program book, but this year's grouping, there are a handful of really good articles that I recommend seeking it out and reading it. Um, but in particular, since we were talking about the X-Men, I thought I'd bring that up. Now I need to remember that these are separate layers, so I'm going to draw. See, now it looks like I've just drawn through that other thing, but since it's on its own layer, I'm not. I can now complete this underlayer and color it as a whole, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to color each one as a standalone layer, which makes it easier for me to reuse them. I don't know that I ever will, but it makes it easier for me to adjust them and to reuse them in the future. You know what? I'm going to leave that turned off. Yes. All right. Well, I've now rambled about a lot of different things. Anything else you guys are hoping I would talk about? Oh, by the way, the guest I thought I was going to have contacted me and told me that they're not going to be able to make it. So it is just me tonight rambling like I've been doing for the last 2 hours. So if you were sitting around hoping that someone else would pop along, sorry to disappoint you, but it's just me. Though Dale, I suppose if you wanted to come on and we can talk about X-Men some more, or baseball, or comics, or whatever, you are certainly welcome. I don't want to put any pressure on you. I might have to suddenly, if we do this too much, I'm going to have to make you the co-host. Oh, do. What else? What else is on my mind? Talked a lot about comic books today. The conversation has me. I tell you, the thing I'm thinking about right now is Mage. That was another comic that I read and reread. I got um, I got to meet Matt Wagner at a comic convention in Ithaca, New York, when Mage, the Hero Discovered, was uh, one issue away from being completed. And I don't know if any of you collected it back then. Uh, there was a point where it got that far, and it had been coming out. I don't know, it had coming out fairly regularly, but it wasn't like a monthly book. And then there was some a bit of a delay, or the final book was significantly longer um, than the rest in the series. And it was a double issue or a triple issue with like a big, huge gatefold image in it. And so there was a long wait between issue 11 and issue 12. And during that wait, I got to meet Matt Wagner at this Comic Con in Ithaca. And he was a super guy. Super nice. That's all the story I have for that. I was asking him things about this. I learned things that have since become uh, very common knowledge among fans of that comic and him in general and his work. But at the time, I got the inside scoop. he told me about how he did the coloring with the airbrush and a couple of other things. Dale says, thanks, but tonight I have to demure. I don't know. He says the co-host thing is tempting. You know, if you're a co-host, you got to show up. You got to show up, rain or shine, man. The show must go on. I wasn't going to make any co-host anyway. So yes, as I say, no pressure, and I just wanted to put the offer out there. I came on tonight knowing that there was a very high probability that it would just be me, and I was okay with that. I wasn't sure the audience would be, but I was okay with it. Let's see what we got here. What are some of your favorite comic book storylines from Marvel or DC? I really enjoyed the Venom storyline from Spider-Man. The black suit was awesome. So the original. So I'm not. Before I answer the question, I'm going to respond to the Venom storyline. Um, the original black suit storyline was pretty interesting. It was one of the storylines that came out of the original Secret Wars series, which I was not a fan of. I did not. I didn't like Secret Wars. I didn't hate it, but I really I liked it when it was announced. I loved the idea. There were some things that came out of it which were great, not the least of which the Venom storyline. But Secret Wars itself, for those of you who don't remember, was most of the heroes on Earth got disappeared by a creature named the Beyonder. No one on Earth knew what happened. They just all popped out of existence and went to have this Secret Wars storyline that took place on a world, another galaxy, reality, really unclear. It doesn't really matter for the purposes of the story. And it was a gimmick, right? Get all the characters together. They all disappeared from their stories, and then I think a lot of the comics had an issue where side characters got to be featured for a while before but some of them were just like 6 months later, when the characters return and some of them with stories like, oh my god, what happened here? Or the Thing didn't come back. What happened to the Thing? Well, they were kind of cagey about that because the whole story had to be revealed in Secret Wars. And the concept of this storyline, I thought I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I didn't particularly hate it. I wound up just not liking the comics. I didn't like the story that Jim Shooter told in Secret Wars. I didn't like, and he was the editor in chief for Marvel at the time. So, he had control over what all the characters were doing anyway. And still, having said that, I got the feeling like he didn't really understand a lot of his characters, and I didn't like the way he wrote them, and I really didn't like the story. But the good thing about it was, because of the way they did that, you could kind of just ignore it. It's something that happened in another comic. If all you wanted to do was go on reading X-Men or Spider-Man or whatever comic, you could. And you never needed to pay attention to what actually happened in Secret Wars. And that's mostly what I did. When Spider-Man popped back with that black suit, which, turned out to be Venom, that was a really fun storyline. I agree with you. um, Chris. Uh, it, I just the way it went. What they did with Venom from there on, I'm less of a fan of. I don't want to say it's bad at all. It has the ongoing character of Venom, what they did with him, uh, since just never really appealed to me. But that first storyline coming out of Secret Wars, that was really good. Um, Michael in chat says the Aquaman series by Neil Posner and Craig Hamilton, that was really good. Um, I've got a personal story about that uh, title. Um, I really liked it too. I bought it off the shelves. I enjoyed it. Um, a member of my family, who I will not name, uh, was a teenager at the time and had come to visit. And I told him that he could go through and read any of my comics he wanted. And turns out, I'd read that. It had happened. It was in my comic collection. I didn't go back to reread it a lot. While I agree with you, Michael, that was a really good series. It didn't hit me as being that impactful for me. Um, like I say, I liked it. I don't have anything negative to say against it. And I kept it I didn't want to get rid of it. I kept it in my collection. Um, I never noticed, but while this member of my family was visiting, this young person who was, as I say, a young teen or tween. I don't remember how old this person was. Anyway, uh, they were reading the comics in my collection and really liked that one and took it home with them. Which I'll tell you what, as I told this person later on, I never even noticed. I never went back to reread that comic. I didn't even notice that I didn't have it. And this came up not that long ago, that this person at a family conversation or an email thread just reached out to me and said I need to admit something. I need to come clean. This has been bothering me for years, and told me that they had done this thing and apologized, which was great, right? We all do stupid things when we're kids, and as I say, it didn't impact me. It wasn't a super. I think it was even like issue 3 in the series. It wasn't. I don't. They wanted to read how it ended. I don't know. But it was not something that had. Like I say, it wasn't even something I had noticed. Uh, Here, 40 years later. And so my immediate reaction was, "Oh, well, I had no idea." Well, just kind of like what I just said here. You were a kid. You did a dumb thing. Doesn't matter. Never hurt me. I never was bothered by it. It turned out fine. You know what? Do you feel bad about it? I forgive you. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And for me, the funny thing, and the thing that shows what a quality person my relative is they said, no, it bothers me. I need to retire. I still have it, and every time I come across it, it makes me feel terrible. And I've got to return it to you. And I'm like, look, it's going to cost you more to mail it back to me than the comic is worth anymore. I forgive you. It's my gift. You enjoyed it. You love it. It's my gift to you. And they but they couldn't. They literally couldn't, because for them it no longer represented the goodness of the comic. It represented the mistake they made, and that if I want to get overblown and dramatic about it, the betrayal of a family member. So when you mention that Aquaman series, that's what it means to me. And really, then what it means to me is how much I love this member of my family, and I'm glad that we're still connected. We've got a. This is not a very close member of my family. It's close, and again, not going to say who or what the relationship is. It's not like a brother. It's not like someone I saw all the time. It was a relative that I saw regularly but infrequently, um, and but like I say, that despite the years and the deaths in the family and the fact that we no longer live in the same parts of the country, that we're still in contact and that it still matters. And so you mentioning that comic mostly brings up for me, a, a good, warm, fuzzy feeling about my family member who stole a comic from me. It's great, and if that person ever happens to be watching this, let me say I 100% meant everything I said. It never caused me a moment of worry. As far as I was concerned, you were welcome to keep it as a gift from me. That person did mail it back to me, and I now have that comic. I think I got rid of the rest of the series. I don't think I have the other issues to go around it anymore. But I have that issue, and now it means more to me, and I'm probably never going to get rid of it. So there you go. That's what that Aquaman series means to me. And the beautiful thing about this, things like comic books, or even our game collections and these hobbies that we have, how they have meanings for us beyond the that are just so personal that comic couldn't possibly mean that to anyone else. That comic will never have that meaning for anyone else in the world. I feel fairly certain. But for me, that Craig Hamilton Aquaman, always going to mean that and represent the love of family for me. It makes me laugh. Chris Andrew, don't go sleeping. Don't go snooping around there. Don't go revealing anything. You might be right. I'll never say. I will never say. I love the fact, I love being able to do this kind of drawing that just, because I'm working on the screen, it shows up. I, I do miss the ability, the, the, the added, as I watch, well, sorry, let me start again. As I watch other videos of other artists working where they are doing mostly doing cameras showing their hands over their shoulders or with a clip-on thing over a board. You can't always see cleanly what lines are being drawn, but you can see their hand movements, and I think that's the one thing that I wish I had an easier fix for these shows, because I often am doing little flourishes with my hand that you can't see on screen because they're down here over near the desk where I'm drawing. If I stop and do this, maybe you see my shoulder move. but that's it. Um, so it would be nice if I could figure out a way to include that as part of these, but I'm doing most of my drawing digitally. Also, if I was drawing physically, I'd need to keep the paper down, of course, um, where it was. And sometimes I'm moving. You know, you can't see this either, but I'm moving the the thing around or flipping it up and down, and it would go off camera. Uh, Whereas here, no matter what I do, you still get to see the totality of the drawing. Pluses and minuses, pluses and minuses. Um, Dale says, now I have to visit you just so I can steal something from you too. Hey, man, family's family. Mm, you're not family. Mm. I love you, Dale. I love you, Dale. You're not family. um, my favorite series, says Michael in chat, are the ones that debuted in the late 80s and early 90s that had cool characters but really bad writing. New Guardians, Wanderer, New Blood. Just wanted to rehab them so badly. Yeah, well, you know, the era of Image Comics. There's a lot that changed in they did a lot to change comics, and in some ways it was a an explosion and a chance to do things, amazing things we'd never seen before, and in some ways it was the start of the collapse of a golden era, because of the what they did was give artists the ability um, to be front and center and own their own creations like they never had before. And so you wind up with some really good looking stuff. But it also, the artists, I can tell you as a writer, one of the things that professionally has been a problem throughout the entirety of my career is that there are jobs and situations where uh, the the company or the people involved, the boss involved, or some combination thereof, don't think that because you are a native speaker of a language and because you can write words and write sentences in that language, that is the same as being a writer. Um, and let me say that the worst thing that Image Comics did for comics was to bring about the number of the decoupling of popularity on the overall sales market of good writing being a large part. I guess I messed the construction of that sentence up. Decoupling of good writing being a necessary part of being a best-selling book. It didn't used to be that a a top artist couldn't just get a book published and get sales without the writer, without the editorial board of whatever company was publishing them approving the writer and keeping a qualitative control over the writing. And the start of self-publishing and small publishing meant that you could, as the artist, you as a Todd McFarlane, as Eric Larson, you could just, no, it's a story. I wrote it. It's dialogue. I wrote it's words. I wrote them. The main thing is I'm drawing it, and people love my drawings. And, the top selling books starting to just be bad from a writing perspective. I think as someone who does both, maybe my perspective is a little skewed. But yeah, so I do not have the love that you do, Michael, for the comics of that era that were beautiful but badly written. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Love them. Love what you love, man. But yeah, Dale says, did anyone else read Strike Force Morituri? I remember Strike Force Morituri. I remember reading the first issue and really liking it, and then I don't know why, but I don't remember reading anything beyond that. I do remember that I had friends that loved Strike Force Morituri, but I was not one of the readers. Tell us, Dale. Tell us about Strike Force. Oh, I was also going to bring up not really directly related, in a parallel related way. Does anyone remember Atari Force? Boy, was that a gorgeous book. Drawn by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Ooh, boy, was that beautiful. Does anyone remember Alien Legion? Oh, I can't remember the artist's name. Beautiful, beautiful sci-fi military, uh, alien Marines book. Man, that was a gorgeous book. Frank Scirocco, maybe, was the artist's name. That was really good. Hi, Engine Joe. Thank you for coming. Good to see you. Engine Joe says, I like the stuff from Valiant when they did the Nintendo comics. That was probably early 90s, right? Because I have no memory of that. If that was, I was in Japan when those came out. And when I came back from Japan, my comic collecting it didn't drop off, but I stopped. I kept well, I guess it did drop off, but I just didn't have the interest in finding the new titles and trying everything. Like if something was good and people could lend it to me, I'd try it, and if I liked it, I'd start buying it. But if I was less likely to just take a flyer on and say, "Hey, this looks interesting," if neither the art nor the story nor something about it gave me a strong encouragement, I needed someone else to point me toward it. Um, let's see. And Joe says, I remember the year that Magic the Gathering broke. Even the comic book industry got overwhelmed. Yeah, I was in Japan when that happened. Although it was getting closer to the time that I came back. I had friends who were working at West End Games at the time, and had comic book stores, and so I knew people who I have a couple of friends I know who had the opportunity to invest in Magic, and didn't. Um, that had met and knew Peter from the convention circuit, and of course I know people who are working in the game industry. Okay, I think this is. I think it's going to come out nice. I showed that three-tiered thing. I think this is going to come out good. Michael says his all of Atari Farce, including the mini books. All right. Consumed a lot of Star Wars stuff in the '90s. Says Injun Joe, like the Zahn novels. Yeah, yeah. Those bad DC books had bad writing, but actual full time writers. Well, you know what? That not all writers are good writers, but there's the other thing. As a person pushing that, writers, just because you can put a sentence together doesn't mean you're a writer. You know what? Just because you're getting paid to produce to to be to have a credit as a writer, it doesn't mean you're a writer either. There are bad writers who are professional writers. It would be way too snobby of me to not say that. Strike Force was not part of the main Marvel continuity, says Dale. Uh, Aliens have invaded Earth, and humanity reverse engineers some alien tech to give people powers. But the process was inevitably fatal. Subjects had maybe a year to live, and so they had to master their abilities and do as much damage to the aliens as possible before they died. Yeah, yeah, that sounds familiar. Like I say, I remember reading the first issue and I remember liking it, and I also remember that I did not read more. Well, until someone handed me a bunch to read, and in which case I read it once and let it go. And as this conversation has certainly brought out, if I like something, I will read it a lot, and that is well, I will read and reread it, and that's one reason why it sticks in my head as well as it does, is because any of these comics that we're talking about that I really liked, I read the issues multiple times. In the same way, I watch movies and TV shows over and over, and always have. I didn't understand this at the time, um, but it turns out that I'm a fan of storytelling, and I'm fascinated by how stories are told and what makes them work. And even though I know what is going to happen, appreciating the craft of it being told well. I think that's why I could read those X-Men comics, aside from the fact that I was, 14, 15 years old and had more time on my hands than I would ever know for the rest of my life. Um, that's why I could read those comics over and over every month. I could read the same series of 15 to 20 that kept growing, right? It's a new comic each month. The list got longer by one each month. Uh, I knew what happened. I knew the art. Like, it was no longer about. I still appreciated the art, and each time I'd read it, I'd I'd hone in on a particular drawing I hadn't before or something. But none of that was a surprise after the fifth month. But I still reread those comics, and let's say it wasn't just those comics. I reread comics all the time. Um, and yeah, it's all about enjoying a a story well told, the skill of telling the story. I didn't understand that at the time, but it has become very clear to me now that that is maybe the thing that I appreciate most in um, all of these aspects of my career, the the game design and the game writing, fiction writing, and comics, uh, uh, drawing, art, and writing. It's about telling a good story, and the video shows. Right, uh, I'm a pretty good storyteller. I will say. I'll say that for myself. I certainly am entertaining enough that people stop and listen. Uh, you people are here on a Thursday night or Wednesday night, but I don't I don't hold myself to be any particular uh, superstar at it, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the craft of it, and I enjoy the act of storytelling very much. All right, let's see what else is going on here. Dark Horse issued a lot of stuff in the '90s. Yeah, Dark Horse is one of those places that I was super interested in what was going on. The stuff when they first came around. Their first one of their first comic, one of their first comics, Black Cross, really good. And I always wanted more of that. It would show up occasionally in Dark Horse Presents as a short story. Um, but the Randy Emberlin, the guy, one of the co-creators of Dark Horse, was the writer for that, and so he was super busy running what was going to become one of the most uh, successful comic book companies in the world. Um, yeah, but Sin City. Uh, what else is coming out in early Dark Horse? I do remember uh, picking up Sin City issue by issue as it came out. A complicated relationship with Frank Miller even then, or Frank Miller's work. I don't know Frank Miller personally. Um, though interestingly, over the holiday weekend at the game gathering I was talking about, someone who has met him told a story about how he met him, which was kind of funny. But A, not my story to tell, and B, I don't remember enough of it to tell it well. But Frank Miller, I tell you, the reason that it came up is that one of Frank Miller's good friends uh, in L.A. is a guy who's had a lot of success in TV and to a lesser extent movies over the years. Who's the brother of the woman that owned TSR? Flint Dilley is the guy's name. Lorraine Williams' brother, Flint Dilley. Um, he and Frank Miller are very good friends. And that was the connection. That's how this person uh, had been in the position that this story took place, that he got to meet Frank Miller at an event. Now, having said that, as I say, I don't remember enough, and I don't feel it's my place anyway to tell. I don't remember enough to tell it, and even if I did, it's not my place to tell someone else's story. Um, I just find it funny that Frank Miller would come up so much right now. Let's see. So as a kid, remember I wasn't supposed to be reading Frank Miller. No one was supposed to be reading Frank Miller. I got into heavy metal in the early 2000s. Used to buy them and read at work. Sit for hours and look at those. Now, were those new, or let's say new as in current at the time heavy metals or back issue heavy metals? Have you ever heard the story told in Dragon about someone set Margaret Weiss's back porch on fire with a mosquito candle? She went downstairs and they were busy watching Henry V Saint's Christmas Day. I've not I have not heard that story. You know what? I did know that there was a story of someone lighting Margaret's back porch on fire, but I've never heard it. So I knew that story existed, but I've never heard. I've never heard anyone tell the tale. Flint Dille, writer for the Transformers. Yes, that is that uh, Flint Dille. They were newer heavy metal, didn't have any from the '80s era. Well, fair enough. Heavy metal is heavy metal in every era. Um, I I never quite got into heavy metal. I would buy the occasional issue here or there, but I didn't find the stories were not grabbing me uh, the way I wanted to. Uh, there was a point in the early '80s, again in the early '80s, when Marvel created a magazine to be a competitor to heavy metal called Epic Illustrated. I bought all of those. Well, I guess maybe not all of those. I bought that for a long time. And a lot of the stories were from the same or similar people that were getting published in heavy metal, and I thought they were okay. But they also included occasionally uh, stories that actually tied in to Marvel. There's a long running. I'd been buying the magazine for several years already when they started a story called The Last Galactus story, which John Byrne wrote and drew. I think Terry Austin actually did the inks on that. Um, and It was all right. But it was supposed to be Marvel continuity in Epic Illustrated. Um, Kevin Eastman took over heavy metal in the early 2000s, and then I heard about that when it happened. I thought that was very exciting. I only found out several years after he sold it that he sold it. So that's how much I was paying attention, which is enough to know that happened. I certainly didn't start buying it, and yeah. Michael says he knew I was heading for Epic Illustrated. Of course he did. I'm predictable. I'll admit it. Dale says Roger Moore told the fire story. Well, if only Roger was interested in being in the limelight. Roger's among the people that I have invited to be on the show, who has kindly declined because he's not in the industry anymore and doesn't do things publicly, and just isn't interested in rekindling that. And as I said to him, fair enough. I will not argue with him on that, and I will not. I hope this doesn't feel like I'm somehow going against this and trying to and making a point, saying, "Oh, Roger. I get it. I wish it wasn't the case, but I respect his decision. And he's a super nice guy. I would never do anything to put him in a position he didn't want to be in. But I do wish that he would change his mind about that, because I would love to have him on. He's got some great stories, and he's a super nice guy. Funny, again, since I did this to Roger, I'll do it to someone else. Another person who has uh, declined for similar reasons is another person associated with Dragon Magazine. Is Dave Gross, former editor of Dragon Magazine, who I invited to be on the show, and he also, for almost exactly the same reasons, said no. And totally respect that, and hope that at some point uh, he changes his mind. Or, I don't know. I guess all it would take would be for one of them to start working on some new project that they wanted to promote, and then suddenly being on the show might be a little more appealing. So that, combined with the fact that I would love to read something that either one of them wrote, I hope they find projects to work on someday, because then maybe I can get them to be on the show. Let's see. Did I ever read the Eclipse Comics DNA Agents? I did not read DNA Agents. I read a bunch of comics from Eclipse. Um, I don't remember what it was. Something about DNA Agents just didn't appeal to me. And which is funny, because I remember the covers were really snappy, and colorful, and humorous. But DNA Agents as a comic, I must have tried to read. I'm sure I read an issue or two. I wouldn't have just decided, no, I won't read that. But I guess I could. I can be a real asshole sometimes too. But I did not read DNA Agents. Is now the long version of that answer. Mobius, the guy with the pith helmet in it. Yeah, yep. That anything by Mobius is just beautiful to look at. I'm trying to look at the time. We're going nearly 3 hours now. Look at that. Just me talking to myself. Well, I mean talking to you, but blathering away for 3 hours. All right. I'm thinking about it. I may finish this section here of leaves. I don't know if I'll call it a night then. Maybe. Well, first of all, I got to erase that. I did those. So part of the trick about this depth thing is I've got to make sure that the line weight changes as things get further away from the camera. And the size of the leaves as they get further away need to get smaller. Now, a lot of this is just going to wind up being a green mass. There's no reason to get too much detail in here, but a little bit goes a long way. All right, so let's pretend. I don't know this for sure. Let's pretend I'm going to be wrapping up sometime soon here. Is there anything else you're hoping I would talk about? Anything? Any other questions you want to pose before I bring us to a close for this Wednesday evening? We've covered a lot of very weird ground. And although we started on the topics of games in the game industry, really spent more time talking about comics fandom than anything else. Let's see. Bill met him at a convention. Oh, well, that's nice. That's awesome. Mobius, I presume you're talking about. Love to hear Harold Johnson and Roger Moore talk about Tasselhoff. That is fun. Harold Johnson recently was a guest on an episode of the official show promoting the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, which is a convention that I'm going to be a guest at in January of next year. And they do a lot. They do a lot of attending and work at other shows in the meanwhile, and they've got a weekly live stream show here on YouTube. You should look them up. Page, Page, the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, and they've got a. First of all, if you're anywhere in the Northeast area, the people that run it are fantastic, and I haven't been because I don't live there. Though knowing them well enough, my friend Ed Stark is now working with them as the guest coordinator. They have a huge number of guests. One of their goals for their show is to have a very high ratio of guests to attendees, so that it's very easy for attendees to have a chance to interact with the special guests. A lot of conventions, they've only got a few of them, and you've got to stand in line or buy a ticket to meet the guests. And certainly, there will still be people that you have to do that for at Page. But there will be a lot of industry guests from gaming and comics and media and lots of other things. They seem to, let me say, I know the people doing it, they are terrific folks. And everyone I know who's gone to one of the... Dale, you went last year, right? They put on a really good show. So, all that to say, Harold is scheduled to be a guest next January too, and they invite their upcoming guests to be on their live stream show. And Harold just was on 2 weeks ago. So if you go to look them up on YouTube here, again, Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo page, and go find that, because it's a terrific episode. I realize I say that now. I also appeared at the tail end of that. I was in the audience, just kind of enjoying Harold talking and commenting, like you guys are here in the chat. And and while I was doing that, they invited me to, kind of like I invited Dale earlier. They invited me to come in and be on the show. And unlike Dale, I was so full of myself that I said, "Of course, I'll come on your show," and got to chat with Harold a bit. Harold, great guy, also great storyteller, and lots of interesting moments in gaming that happened where he was in the room or just outside the room. Let's see. I wasted 5 hours playing No Man's Sky the other day. All right, so apparently I'm not the biggest waste of your time. Great. Harold Johnson seemed to have a bit of a grudge that he hasn't been given more credit for helping develop Dragonlance. Hickman and Weiss got most of the credit. Harold, Roger, and Larry are Tasselhoff's daddy. Tasselhoff's daddy. So Dragonlance is a complicated issue. I was not there for the development of Dragonlance. I worked on the Dragonlance 5th Age team when there was more than a little controversy of our own, and all of that is water under the bridge. But there's there are mystiques that grow up around popular things like D&D. Let's forget about Dragon. Let's just look at D&D and Gary Gygax. There's no denying how important Gary is, but every time he is pushed forward as the singular person in the development of D&D, there are a lot of people who did a lot of work that are not getting the credit that are their due. Unfortunately, it seems really hard to try and tell that story without it seeming like you're trying to tear down one person to promote another person. I only met Gary once, and that was super briefly. I don't have a bone in that, and I'm not trying to change the subject. What I'm saying is Dragonlance is similar. It's very complicated. Who did what? Who contributed what when? The fact of the matter is that the novels, the thing that became super popular, were these novels that were inarguably written by Weiss and Hickman, and they have gotten the lion's share of everything because of that. I think that in their and on top of that, there were complications with the company where they had to fight for credit and royalties and lots of other things that they should have gotten. And so that meant a lot of digging in and claiming. Wow, I was going to say the wrong thing there. Digging in and staking claims and making public statements and backing them up as the truth when I think in their hearts of hearts they would, in quiet moments, say, yeah, there was more of that in this. On the other hand, they may also just think, let's compare it to the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko argument about Spider-Man or Doctor Strange and who created what. Stan Lee's perspective, for a long time I just thought, Stan's being an asshole. Stan Lee, I can be an asshole too. But, and he's denying credit and claiming, but everything I've ever seen about that, his perspective of, I thought of a thing, and if I hadn't written down on a scrap of notebook Spider-Man, there never would have been a Spider-Man. Therefore, I created Spider-Man. While Steve Ditko's perspective of, Stan had written this thing which was kind of a half idea, and Jack Kirby had drawn some drawings that weren't working, and I took this thing and crafted it into Peter Parker, this guy, the Spider-Man, the story, the this and the that Stan then wrote and changed things and polished things, and but I'm the creator. All right, well, where is the truth in that, right? That Stan Lee's claim of, if I hadn't written Spider-Man down on the image, I hadn't gotten the idea. He was a kid. He got bitten by a spider. He got spider powers. He becomes a superhero. There would never be a Spider-Man. Therefore, I created Spider-Man. Find it hard to argue with that. But I also find it hard to say that's the whole of the story. And I find it hard to argue with the fact that from a back of an envelope to the character that we recognize and watch movies of and read the comics of never would have happened without Steve Ditko, and so he definitely created what is Spider-Man. It's a complicated story. And I tell that because I am not involved in it at all. Now I'm going to bring it back to the thing that I am involved with, which is Dragonlance. Dragonlance is a complicated story. The background to Dragonlance is a complicated story. And there are many subtle levels of the truth. If Weiss and Hickman had not written those novels, Dragonlance wouldn't have become what it was. And their novels were different than what they built on and changed, and they interpreted and reinterpreted and added to what other people had created. Yep, and they created those new things. So are Weiss and Hickman the creators of Dragonlance? In a way, yes. But if Harold Johnson and Roger Moore and Jeff Grubb and a dozen other people had not contributed bits and bobs, would they have gotten where they were? No. They would have come up with a variation on that. Something else would have filled those bits and bob points. It's a complicated question. And how much credit should anyone get for what part of it is an even more complicated question. So I do, however, agree that it is a shame when the fan interpretation of the fan interpretation of what happened is simplification to this person or these people created the thing. Therefore, we will celebrate them, and we need celebrate no other people. Oh, sure, we'll clap for other folks. But when it come to it, these are the people. It's the Gary Gygax. It's the Stan Lee. It's the Weiss and Hickman. That's problematic. As a person who works in this creative field, it's problematic to know that there are certainly things that I've worked on that I gave important bits to. And I've given bits that the thing that came out at the end would not have existed if not for my bit. But someone else has the credit. I've been involved in that to a lesser extent. Not to a Dragonlance extent. Not to a Spider-Man extent. So, yeah, I don't know I added anything there, but there you go. So, yeah, Jack Kirby, another certainly example. The whole of Marvel in the early '60s. The more you talk to people who were there, the more it seems like, for all that right now, the mythology is Stan Lee created the Marvel Universe. What's there? He made Spider-Man. He made Thor. He made the X-Men. A lot of times, it's much closer to what I was saying. Stan Lee had a half-formed idea of, I think we should maybe do a story like this. And Jack, what can you make of that? A lot of the times, it would be more true to just say Jack Kirby did the bulk of the work. But whatever. I'm not trying to argue the Kirby versus Lee question or the Ditko versus Lee question. I'm just saying that the clean and easy story of Stan Lee invented the Marvel Universe is less pure, less, I don't know. It's the easy version of the complicated reality. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's the easy version of the complicated reality. Complicated is probably closer to true. Anyway, wow. See, Chris says, unlike Doug Niles, Jeff Grubb, and others, it seems to me that Harold is the person that seems most offended by the lack of credit. Well, Harold got snubbed a lot in his career. I'll say that Harold probably is the person who people should know more about. He was involved at so many junctures of so many products over the course of D&D's history, where he has either done what I was describing before, helped to create a thing that someone else ran with, or took something that someone else did and polished it and put it together and made it work and still let them get the credit. Uh, and he was not the cool kid among the TSR family. There were a lot of people who just didn't. I don't know. They didn't like him. They didn't want to hang around with him. They didn't hang. He was a family guy. He was, he's a theater kid. Is very, very much a theater kid kind of guy. And so, and he was constantly doing other. Now, Harold also did a lot of things that didn't work out, and those never got talked about for the same reason that all of our stuff that didn't work out doesn't get talked about. But Harold, I think, Chris, to your point, is overall the guy that deserves more mention and more credit, I guess, more awareness among the fan base of the stuff that he did. He should be one of those people that's celebrated. He's someone that every D&D fan should know Harold's name. He should be among those people that are just up in the pantheon of every game convention everywhere. Someone should mention Harold in one way or another. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. And like I say, Harold, an amazingly nice guy. I seem to say this a lot. I've had luck to meet a lot of nice people. Harold's an amazingly nice guy who has very often put the company and other people ahead of himself. I think if I had to try to make assumptions, I think in the belief that the truth will out. Like eventually he will get his due. And I think that if he is disgruntled, or if the stories are about him being disgruntled, or people feel disgruntled on his behalf, it's because that turns out not to be the case in life more often. Like, we'd like to believe that if you just quietly do the good thing, you will get recognized for it. And sadly, more often than not, that's not the case. And Harold in his life has done the good thing a lot. A lot. And say the sad fact of the matter is that, well, most of the time, it's just going to go unrecognized. All right. Having said that, I've now decided that this is where I'm going to stop for the night. Let me turn back on that top couple of layers. This will look confusing because everything's existing. You can see through each layer, but these are most of the drawings for the evening. I've now been going on 3.5 hours, and several of you have been here almost all the whole of the time. You need a better hobby. Thank you all. Thank you everyone that tuned in tonight. I'm not going to name names tonight because there have been so many folks who've tuned in and chatted and taken part, gave comments, gave questions. I had a very good time. And I will now work to finish this drawing. We'll see how long that takes me because I got a lot of things on my plate at the moment. But thank you all for tuning in. Excuse me. If you are following, if you've gone this long, if you put up with me for 3 hours of this, well, there's a few things I think that, you know what, kind of in the same way that Harold is owed more attention, I think you owe me a couple of very, very small things. One is to subscribe wherever you're watching this. If you're watching, particularly YouTube, go to YouTube, subscribe to my channel. It's not going to cost you anything. There actually is absolutely nothing there. All you'll do is find out when I'm on, and YouTube will show you more of my stuff when it's available. If you watch 3 hours of this, that can't be bad. The second thing is to also subscribe to the free newsletter for this show, 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. There is a paid version. Certainly, I would welcome it if you wanted to become a paid subscriber. But 90%, 99%, no, all right, more like 95% of the material, free subscription will get you to. So just sign up, please, please. All right. Having gone that far, if you do like what I'm doing and you want to encourage me to do more of it, well, the best way to do that is to join my Patreon. Patreon.com/Stanex. Let's face it, we're talking about all these people who worked in the industry, and no one made a mint doing that. And then Weiss and Hickman, who made a lot of money writing New York Times bestselling novels, they're not millionaires. They're not living in mansions on the hill. And these drawing cartoons, I love doing it. I love doing it. But it doesn't pay the rent, and the rent's got to get paid. So the more people who enjoy what I do and want to encourage me to do more of it, the best way to do that is to become a patron at patreon.com/Stanex. I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll try to, besides giving extra stuff to the patrons, extra behind the scenes stuff and more cartoons and more drawings and early access to things, I try and find other ways to make it worth your while, because I appreciate you. You don't have to do this. No one owes me anything. In fact, I don't. Anyone that joins this, I want them to be people that are doing it because they enjoy it, and they feel they're getting something out of it, and this is their way of getting more of it or showing appreciation for it. So yeah, if that's you, go on. You can also become a free member at Patreon too, so you can go do that and then upgrade later when the economy gets better. All right, I'll be back tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific for another episode of Random Encounters, the randomly generated improv cartooning show. 3.5 hours apparently is past my limit because I'm not making sense anymore. So I am out of here. Thank you all for tuning in. Take care. I'll see you soon.